This is Money Moves on VSiN, the sports betting network.
We're kicking off hour 2 here on Money Moves, VSiN, the sports betting network. Sirius XM, channel 158. Stormy Buonantony and Jonathan Von Tobel with you. We're live in downtown Las Vegas, Circa Resort and Casino. Got a lot to discuss as round 2 of the NBA postseason and NHL playoffs roll on tonight. Also, coming up in about 15 minutes, we'll dive into the Major League Baseball slate today. We got 16 games, including a doubleheader for the Cardinals that's going to kick off a little bit earlier on in the day. VSiN's own Adam Burke will join us. We'll go through the slate with him, as well as an article that he put out on VSiN.com this week about fading the Rockies and how to profit on their misery moving forward. So I'm excited for that.
Well, I like the way that he wrote it because for those who don't remember, I believe he wrote an article just like that about the White Sox last year. So this is where we're at with the futility of some of these teams. Just a year later, he is already now having to write an article about do we fade this team every single game as well.
What a time to be alive. But let's start where we left off in the last segment, because I do think it's an important conversation to be had when it comes to betting etiquette. Just real quickly in general, because there's no worse feeling in the world when you're watching a game and so far you're on the right side of it and you're feeling good, but it's one of those that you don't say it out loud. It's just like the announcer jinx, the curse. You never want that energy. When someone texts you or someone DMs you and tags you in it, say, oh man, great call. You're good. You're Gucci. Don't do it. Just refrain. You don't need to be out here telling people congratulations before the ticket is cashed, ever.
Yeah, no, I mean, we all know that's something you don't do, especially to somebody that you would allegedly call a friend. But
you're still so bitter.
I mean, you would be,
I don't blame you at all. I don't blame you at all.
I think anybody really would be. But it's not like Mitch Moss cares. So
come on, Mitch. I can't believe you.
I will say, I think one of the things – so there's that, or there is also, as I think many of us have been accused of, is the reverse mush, which is, you're watching it. Like I've done it a couple of times where I'm just like, I'm cooked. We're done here, and you do it pretty early because you can kind of see the writing on the wall. And then eventually your fortunes turn when you do it to yourself. Many people would say that is something that is underhanded as well, because obviously somebody out there has something. But I'm going to go out on a limb. As much as I dislike him for the moment, I would say that I don't think wishing somebody good luck or saying good job affects the outcome of a sporting event.
Sure.
Okay, we can agree on that.
Good luck? Why would...
No, I mean, like what you're saying is like if I were to text you, hey, good call, in the first quarter of a game, I don't think that text message affects the outcome of the contest.
It doesn't affect the outcome. It affects my mood now the rest of the way because I feel cursed. Okay. Of course, it has nothing to do with the actual result, but it's just frustrating and annoying, and don't do it if you want to continue to have friends. Okay? Just putting it out there.
You know who was the worst at that in the early days of VSiN? Greg Peterson. I'm looking at you. Greg, when we first started, when we were in the South Point studios all the time, early on, good call. I'm like, Greg, we're 2 minutes in.
It's in the second inning.
Yeah,
baseball's a very volatile sport.
We're 1 out into the first inning. Let's pump the brakes here, Gregory.
Imagine if you bet the Colorado Avalanche on the money line or in regulation or to win the series.
I mean, that
and
was
then
tough.
you get a awesome call right before all of that unfolds in the third period.
I mean, what if you're up 3-1 and you're like somebody who bet St. Louis?
Ugh.
I was going to text you. I deleted it.
No, you weren't. Were you?
I had thoughts of like Stormy was all over this, the end of this series. Like,
kudos to you for refraining.
I at least had the thought, good call for Stormy at the way this series ended. So maybe even the thought is what reversed everything. I didn't even type it out.
No,
I was going to text afterward.
That's the evidentiary support, though, for the words not impacting the outcome, because you didn't even say them and it still happened. So there we go. And obviously, the way that the NBA postseason round 2 has begun, we've had all of these crazy upsets, all big underdogs on the road winning these initial games. The potential for the zigzag theory does that come into play? With Pacers Cavs tonight, I think it's particularly interesting just because of the injuries. And we talked about them a lot in hour one, but for anyone just joining us, Darius Garland, DeAndre Hunter, Evan Mobley, none of them were on the court for pregame shoot-around. You talked about how their head coach views at times questionable and doubtful is the same thing. So what could that mean for these players today? Do we at least potentially see one of them? How do you view the injury situation?
I mean, negative. There's too much noise to really feel comfortable, I think, in any way, shape, or form of diving in. I'll put it this way, actually. I think to me, it's going to be Indiana or pass, and I think there's multiple reasons as to why. Obviously, these injuries are it. This number just staying at 7.5, despite the fact that 3 key role players are very questionable to play in this contest, is very odd to me. Because, again, I think the market is also just assuming the bounce back here for Cleveland. I mean, the bounce back could result in the victory, but to assume that means you have to win by 8 or more points in a game like this, I think is really, really strong given what the roster is looking like at this moment right now. So I think it's kind of hard to pre-flop bet this game. We don't have to bet them all, right? And I think that when you have as many injuries up in the air for key players like this that Cleveland does, it is very easy to sit back and wait to see what's going to happen. And even if all 3 get ruled in, I mean, we're probably going to get back up to 8.5, maybe even 9. I think that's a really strong number just because Cleveland lost game 1.
And I do want to get your reaction to what Kenny Atkinson had to say after the game. Somebody who's not usually particularly vocal in these moments had a lot of feelings when it came to the officials and the no calls that led to some of those injuries. Take a listen.
I think that's on the referees, and if the calls weren't, maybe they were missed calls, or maybe I'm misinterpreting the rules. But I have a problem when we got 2 of our best players doubtful for tomorrow's game. Just I don't. It's hard for me to get my head around that when there were no calls on either one. So I never haven't talked about referees all year, and I think the referees in this league are phenomenal, and they do a great job. And that was a darn good crew did last night. Ton of respect for those guys, but for some reason, it bothers me that we're dealing with this. It shouldn't, at least there should be some, repercussions in terms of making the call.
Yeah, I'm surprised at the plays he's referencing. For those who don't remember, DeAndre Hunter goes up for a bucket. I think it's Neesmith that ends up blocking him, but he puts his hand, pretty clearly puts the hand right on the chest of Hunter that ultimately leads to him falling on the ground and injuring his thumb, dislocating the thumb. Even in review, they went back and looked and said that wasn't a foul. That's almost always a foul when you're initiating contact with the hand when you go for a shot block. And then the other one is Evan Mobley going up and Turner closing in on him, doesn't give him space to land. He twists the ankle. Neither one of them were called for fouls. So what I'm interested in is we always see this game, Stormy, in between games in the series where coaches will come out, call out the refs, try to kind of plant that seed of, hey, come on, you better start calling things this way or whatever it is. And maybe you see a little bit more of a balance. Maybe you see these teams get more whistles, or you just see more whistles in general in a game if it's really focused on. So I'm going to be very curious to see if we get that here today, and if these officials not so much are going to call this in favor of Cleveland, but maybe call a tighter game today only because of what Kenny Atkinson is asking here after that, and that was, I think, yesterday, which he talked about at the practice. So that's what I'm going to be curious about, is if him actually calling out these officials does affect the way that this game is officiated tonight.
I do also appreciate, he has the tough words and then also does the backwards of, and I mean, this is a great crew. Unbelievable to try. Yeah. You got to avoid the fines at all costs.
Yeah, I don't know if he got fined. I got to double check that. I mean, that seems pretty strong. I think those are probably finable words there. Cavs
minus 7.5, despite all the injuries still in the bounce back spot today. And we did see a slight move while we've been on the air on that total. We mentioned over or pass at the 229.5, but it's down to 229. And then in Warriors, Timberwolves, T-Wolves laying 6.5 in game 1 at home. Total 210.
Tony Brothers, by the way, is on the crew today. So Tony Brothers likes to call games.
Okay.
we'll just put it that way.
Last couple minutes here. Let's shift gears to the NHL. Also, at the end of the hour, we will have our best bets for the day still to come here. Adam Burke, as I mentioned as well, and talking all things Major League Baseball. But the Washington Capitals were a plus 105 dog at open in this game 1 against the Carolina Hurricanes. Now they're getting plus 120 at home. Mm-hmm. Canes minus 142. Listen, Carolina made easy work of the Devils in that first round. This is a bad matchup for New Jersey from the start. Then they had all those injuries. Washington beat a Montreal team that's young and is probably a little ahead of schedule playing in the playoffs. So this is going to be a real series. And I don't think that Washington game 1 warrants being this big of an underdog. I know that we use the word value a lot in betting, but I think there is at least perceived value on Washington at home at plus 120 tonight.
I mean, by your measure, right, there is. So, all right, I'm down with this.
I like the Canes to win the series. I said that yesterday, which this could be a similar conversation that I mentioned earlier when we talked about Toronto winning game 1 at home, that maybe the home team takes that first game and then you can buy in on a better price on the series on the other side. Like, I like Florida for the series. I like Carolina for the series here, but I like the Caps tonight, who have been good in series openers. I think the Canes are the better team. They're bigger. They're going to have some problems, but as far as game 1 goes at home, yeah.
I mean, you would know this better, but the market every single year really seems to have a very solid respect for Carolina.
Well, and I've been burned by Carolina a lot in the past before. I've many a futures ticket gone up in flames on this team. They're an analytics darling. Yep. Everybody loves Rod Brind'Amour. They're a team that really takes on the character of their head coach, like all those things. And they do, and they're a hard-nosed group. I am curious what Frederick Anderson version of him we're going to get out the gates here, coming off of the injury where he missed time at the end of that Devil series. I like Alex Ovechkin, I mentioned in hour 1, to score a goal or at least have a point here in game 1. But, and now you look, there's even a plus 140 available on Washington.
There you go.
What?
Sounds like you're going to talk yourself. I was going to say, maybe nothing.
What? I feel like I'm missing something.
Sometimes this might come as a shock. Sometimes the market's wrong.
People do not like Washington at all this year. And I don't know. I disagree. We'll be right back. More Money Moves after this.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Stormy Buonantony and Jonathan Von Tobel with you. One more playoff game that we haven't really got to dive into much yet tonight is the Vegas Golden Knights and Edmonton Oilers going head-to-head in round 2 of the NHL postseason. Game 1 coming up tonight, 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 Eastern on ESPN. I'll be between the benches for that one. Really looking forward to this series that should be fun, and the odds indicate as much. Edmonton in the series minus 115, Vegas minus 105. As far as game 1 goes today, though, the Vegas Golden Knights are minus 135 favorites on home ice. The lone 6.5 goal total that we've seen in these game 1 games. And while I mentioned yesterday that I thought so much for the under. I thought that Florida Leaf series was going to be an under 9 goals scored in that one. I think that Canes Caps is going to be an under series as well. So maybe take that with a grain of salt based on my opinion yesterday. But if there were to be an over series, I think it's Oilers Vegas.
Real quick, though, I mean, going back and, replaying the game and the level of goals that were allowed in that Toronto-Florida series in that first game, I feel like you weren't, too far off. Some of those were some really weird goals.
Weird goals.
Right?
Yes.
And then you get a goaltender that goes out. I feel like maybe, you maybe weren't too off track. We'll see how that series plays out for the rest of the way. But I didn't, come away thinking, this is going to be a high-scoring affair. There were some oddities, including who is it? The defenseman for Toronto, where he just slings a knuckleball and it bounces over the pad of Bobrovsky and between his arm and goes in.
Yeah, and we talked about it earlier. I think Bobrovsky is better than the goals he gave up today. Yesterday, we do have to figure out an update on what's going to happen in net for Toronto moving forward. But yeah, I felt strong in my handicap going in, and then when 9 goals are scored and the first one is scored 33 seconds, and you don't feel so great anymore. But as for Vegas and Edmonton, I do think that this has got over series written all over it, especially in these early games as you're trying to figure each other out. I know Vegas is a good defensive team, but Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, even 2 years ago when these two played in 2023 in the second round of the playoffs, it took Vegas a few games to be able to figure them out and clamp them down. We saw that in round 1 against Minnesota with Kaprizov and Matt Boldy. Took a few games to kind of figure out how to attack that top line. And I know with the Pavel Dorofeyev injury, moving Mark Stone up to that top line for Vegas with Jack Eichel and William Karlsson, that was a big adjustment, and that helped them a lot. But how will Chris Knobloch decide to deploy Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid this series? We don't know yet.
How those two play, the absence along the blue line, obviously, like you mentioned with that Ekholm, how, if anything, is Pickard going to continue to play at that level in between the pipes for them is going to be pretty interesting.
Which also we say at that level, he still gave up 3+ goals at all of his starts.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. And so, is he going to play well enough to just give their offense, which has been pretty good, a chance here in a series like this? I would agree, though. It's actually, and I was going over some of just the numbers that we've seen. It is pretty wild that we're sitting at 6.5 here for the total in this postseason. Given what we've seen, I guess this is what Edmonton hockey is all about. But I think Vegas is good enough with the adjustments they made in that Minnesota series to take advantage of a team that has been the constant for this squad. Going even back to the year in which they beat the Knights did this team. They can be had on defense, and I don't know why I would trust that volatility over the course of a best-of-7 series.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of how much can Vegas take advantage scoring of the Oilers' defense. And I think that'll be a really big part of it. I'm excited to see how this is going to shake out, though. I think this is, in addition to this being the one series I really view as an over series, I also think this has the potential to go 7, which would be fun. One series prop I thought might be worth a look that I'm curious your opinion on is Jack Eichel over 6.5 points for the series. He was held off the score sheet the first 3 games of the set against Minnesota. Still ended up with 5 as they started to figure things out the back end. If they can pick up in this series at all, the way that they finished round 1, I feel like he should at least have 7 points in the set.
I think that makes sense. I think asking any of these forwards for Vegas to have some sort of offensive success throughout the series would make, I think, a ton of sense, given the way that we think this is going to go. And I think the way, the pace at which this series might even go for both of these teams, too, I think it makes a ton of sense to ask. Is there a massive advantage power play-wise for these teams?
I don't think so. I know everybody's going to look at the Oilers on the surface and say, oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then their penalty kill, the way that it faltered. Compared to 2023, again, and I'm sorry, I've got that series so much on my brain because the guys have talked about it a lot this week, but that penalty kill for the Oilers when they faced each other the first time, last year, when the Oilers made it all the way to the Stanley Cup, their penalty kill was nails. It was unbelievable. It's not good here, and the Golden Knights had a really good power play in the regular season, but it fell off a little bit in that first round, so I'm not 100% sure which version of the special teams we're going to get yet.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the power play numbers for Vegas in that series against Minnesota, in terms of the shot share and all that sort of stuff, and looked like they did relatively well in terms of their penalty kill and the high danger chances they were allowing and whatnot, and I assume that's going to be tested in a really big way here.
Exactly. It's just there is a Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl factor that you just have to account for that against other teams you don't really have to in the same capacity. Okay, that said, let's get to the MLB card that we have today. 16 games on deck. First action of the day getting started a little bit early because of a game yesterday that had to be reset. Anything that you liked on the card?
I think what sticks out, there's a couple of things. First off, do we just continue to bank on the Dodgers, just mashing every single person that is a subpar pitcher in their realm? Look at yesterday. So we talked about Sandy Alcantara yesterday. The fact that, again, the over in terms of 2.5 earned runs allowed, that gives up pretty early. Alcantara gets beat up a little bit there by the Dodgers once again. And then now you get Cal Quantrill, son of Paul Quantrill. And when you look at it from that perspective, Quantrill hasn't really been pitching particularly well. ERA is over 8. The fielding independent, well over 5. If you look at some of the other underlying metrics for him, there's really not a ton of quality you can point to here. The contact numbers are abhorrent. Barrel rate's well over 12%. I think that you're talking about a Dodgers lineup with the way that it is hitting all the way through, that you could ask once again to come in here and have some sort of offensive success. And I know it's probably a little cheap to come in and go well, they're minus 270 favorites. Yeah, but if it's working out and trying to circumvent laying a price by going in different directions, I think is the way to go, like we talked about yesterday with the pitching props. And I think another way to do that here again is potentially looking the team total for the game is 6.5 over plus 110. Yeah. But looking at this, I'm trying to find what the exact number was the last look. Yeah, Quantrill in terms of earned runs allowed, Let's see. Yeah, again, 2.5. You're laying a much bigger price than you were yesterday. It's minus 165 as opposed to the minus 125 from yesterday. But you can make the argument Quantrill is pitching at a lower level than what Alcantara is pitching at this point right now, given some of the numbers. And I think it might be fair if you can find like $1.50 in that range for him to go over 2.5 earned runs. And I even think minus 165 is fair.
Yeah, when he faced this lineup last week, only got through 3 2/3, 4 earned runs, 6 hits and a home run, 3 strikeouts and a walk. I mean, Dodgers lineup that day was outstanding with 17 hits, but in that 3-game set against the Marlins previously, all 3 games went over 12-7, 15-2, 7-6. Like the runs were coming through. And the Marlins, too, for the game, like 5th worst bullpen ERA in baseball as well. So I think a lot of things are showing up Dodgers, which is why that price is what it is. But I like the alternate angles that you can get involved with. Anything else that you liked?
What about San Francisco and Chicago? I mean, I think it's a pretty interesting pitching match, especially Colin Ray. Dude, Ray continues.
Really good numbers.
Yeah, it's like to come out here. I've been really impressed. I'd be curious to see what Adam thinks about him when we talk to him coming up here next. But, I mean, every single time out, the guy has been pretty solid. He hasn't given up more than 2 earned runs in a start. That was actually his last time out. The underlying metrics, again, paint a very solid picture. 146 ERA, 250 fielding independent. This is coming off of last year in which he was a very average pitcher, over 167 2/3. I don't know really what has changed for him, but he continues to operate at an extremely high level. And on the other end, you get Verlander, who I thought there was maybe a case to be made at the early portion of the season that there was a bounce back there for Verlander, but looks like he's going to be a pretty average dude so far this year. Outside of the expected ERA, everything's really over 4. It's not like he's going to go out there and get knocked around, but we know how good this Cubs lineup can potentially be. So I was very interested in the Cubs again today here. By the way, our guy Roop actually put together a good performance yesterday, huh? It wasn't like anything otherworldly, but he finally went out there and did a little bit of what we expected, at least in terms of the underlying metrics, and I think he lowered his ERA a bit. But very interested to see what Verlander has against this really talented Cubs
He just didn't have help. 4 errors and the sloppy defense behind him. But so with the Verlander factor, what I was going through his numbers. The Giants are 2-5 in games he started, but in those 7 starts, San Francisco has just scored 13 total runs in the 5 losses and 15 in all of his outings combined. So even though his numbers have been fine, he hasn't gotten any run support either, which is weird, I think, for this lineup. Yeah, I'm going to be curious to see. San Francisco is kind of slowly slipping down the standings in some of these offensive numbers. Like now they're 17th in weighted runs created plus. And I do wonder if maybe the early offensive success was a little bit of an aberration, and we're starting to see the real deal here for San Francisco. Yeah, I did lay it with the Cubs today, minus 148, but out to minus 155 right now. And if you're looking for the best odds on baseball, you got to check out Profit X. That's doing it all season long. Profit X, a peer-to-peer sports exchange, available in 40-plus states, the first of its kind in the U.S., where you can make your sports picks against other groups of fans rather than a sports book. Exchanges give you the best odds on average by 10 to 20%. You can even request your own odds in some cases. Check out Profit X today and use our code VSiN. That'll earn you up to $200 in profit cash your first month. We're going to continue the MLB conversation next with VSiN's own Adam Burke live in studio. Don't go anywhere.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
To dive into some MLB talk here as we welcome you back into this Tuesday edition of Money Moves on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Stormy Buonantony, JVT with you as we welcome onto the desk Adam Burke, Managing Editor here at VSiN.com. Follow him on X at Skating Tripods. And Adam, I want to talk to you, yes, about the slate that we have coming up today and the article you have up at VSiN.com, but something that we mentioned briefly off the top earlier was the NL-AL MVP race, because MLB.com yesterday put out their first straw poll, and to the surprise of no one, Aaron Judge is unanimous in the American League right now, taking all 46 of those expert votes. But in the National League, there's some intrigue and potentially a much more open race. You see Fernando Tatis, Pete Alonso, both with 16 and 17 first-place votes. Ohtani with 8, Kyle Tucker with 4. No first-place votes for Corbin Carroll, but 5th in receiving votes is one of the early surprises in 2025. Anything stand out to you in the NL MVP odds race?
Well, I think there's a few things. I mean, first of all, for Pete Alonso, I don't think he's going to run a 371 batting average on balls in play throughout the rest of the season here. So he's a guy that I do think will fall off of that pace a little bit. I realize that he's plus 220, but the first inning that Shohei pitches has the chance to lock up the award for him. So I mean, I get it. A lot of guys are off to nice starts. I mean, Kyle Schwarber's a guy without a position, so he's not going to get much interest in that market. Kyle Tucker, potentially, if the Cubs continue on the path that they're on. But, I mean, the second that Shohei steps on the mound, which is expected to happen here sometime over the course of the summer, he probably locks up the award, right?
That's what I was kind of thinking about the way that this was looking, which is, am I overthinking this? Shouldn't we just be betting Ohtani to win this thing at this price? Because Adam's right. Now, I guess the question would be, what if he pitches poorly?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's fair, right? Yeah, if he's not very effective, which, I mean, look, it's definitely a possibility, right? I mean, he was really, really good in 2023, but he's coming off of his second Tommy John surgery now. How many innings is he actually going to throw? How much are they going to stretch him out? All that kind of thing. If he gives you 50 innings, 60 innings with a 3.50 ERA, is that good enough? To just basically be like, well, he's still a unicorn. He's still a player that we've never seen before.
At what point do you expect him to start throwing? Because last report I saw, it wasn't close.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I think that's one of the interesting things, right? You look at the situation the Dodgers are in right now, and Ben Kasparias is a guy that they were using in relief, and now they're stretching him out to be a starter because, everybody's hurt for that team. So, it's not like you can rely on Clayton Kershaw types as the season goes along. Tyler Glasnow is hurt again, stuff like that. So, do the Dodgers get to a point where they're like, you know what? Maybe we need to expedite this timeline a little bit, take that chance. I don't know. I don't think so. I think they have enough arms that they don't have to do that. And look, I mean, if there is any minor setback for Ohtani, any sort of shoulder pain, elbow pain, anything like that, they're going to shut it down and say, you know what? He's way too valuable to us as a hitter. So there is some risk involved here. And I think the question is, I mean, can he win this thing again as just a hitter? I think it's very much possible. I mean, this is a guy right now that, he's already up to 10 stolen bases this season, had a 50-50 year last year, almost a 50-60 year last year. If that's the benchmark he's graded on, then I guess it's a little bit more difficult for him to get enough votes to win. But at the end of the day, I mean, he still deserves to be the favorite. And at this point in time, nobody's a good enough price or nobody's profile is attractive enough for me to, float something else out there.
All right, so you mentioned Alonso and the way that he has built his profile up to this point. Is Aaron Judge going to continue to hit nearly 500 on balls in play? It's ridiculous.
Probably not. But, I mean, the guy is very, very clearly the best hitter on the planet, and it's not close. And this isn't even something where it's like, oh, he plays in a little league ballpark. It's not like he's hitting a bunch of cheap home runs down the right field line. The dude is just driving the ball all over the field. So as long as he stays healthy, I mean, what he's doing, how far ahead of everybody else he is offensively, as long as he's able to stay healthy, it's his award.
And so that's the wrinkle. At a $9 price right now, this is still a very long season and injuries do happen. Let's say, and obviously we never root for the worst, but should something like that happen, is there a name that stands out to you with all of these double-digit plus prices on the board that might be worth a look?
Well, I think it's tricky because a lot of the guys that are having really good seasons here so far are guys that I wouldn't really expect that to continue, right? Jonathan Aranda's second in Major League Baseball and weighted on base average for the Rays. That's not sustainable. Alex Bregman hitting at the rate that he is, probably not sustainable. Maybe there's a little bit more sticking power to it because he's at Fenway Park, because that's such a good offensive venue, and whatever they're calling Minute Maid Park now in Houston wasn't as good. George Springer is in his mid-30s. That's not sustainable. Cal Raleigh's a catcher. You just wear down at that position. I don't really know that there's anybody offensively that can kind of keep up this pace. And also, I saw some interesting things about Bobby Witt Jr. and his contact quality. His exit velocity, the barrel rate's down a little bit. There's some things there in the profile where you kind of wonder how good he can be offensively as we go forward. Speaking of which, Jose Ramirez, a guy that's up there at 50-1, a guy that's there are times where he carries the entire Cleveland team. He doesn't look as good this year either. The bat speed's down a little bit. The contact authority's down a little bit. He's been battling some injuries, doesn't have a body type that's going to age super well. So this is a scenario to me where even if Judge misses 6 weeks because of an oblique strain or something, I don't know if anybody, maybe outside of Bregman, can close the gap enough.
Yeah, I'm glad I used my top pick on Jose Ramirez in fantasy this year. It's been going well. So let me ask you this, guy. We know we have a couple of bets that you have on the article, but general question, because the name that sticks out on this list for the straw poll is obviously Cal Raleigh, who's been off to a tremendous start from a power standpoint. But the Mariners lineup has also been insane.
Right.
Why? Like this lineup stunk last year, and now this is, I think, the second or third best lineup in baseball by weighted runs created plus so far.
So, well, first of all, keep in mind, I mean, if they're producing offensively because of their park factor, they get graded on a curve, right?
Sure,
so that's one of the reasons why WRC Plus is going to look so favorably upon them. Also, there's not a lot of great offensive parks in the AL West to begin with. I don't know that WRC Plus and the park factor have caught up with Sacramento yet, because Oakland and Sacramento are two dramatically different types of parks. But I will say this. When you look at the tail end of the season last year for the Mariners, so they fired their hitting coach, they also fired their manager, and they wound up bringing in Edgar Martinez as sort of like a hitting advisor, changed their hitting coach as well. Last month of the season last year, Seattle had a 339 weighted on base average, 128 WRC plus, third and second respectively in baseball. So I don't know if it was just a philosophical change or something like that, but the building blocks were set for this last year. And now that it's finally come to fruition, the interesting thing is, George Kirby's hurt,
right.
Logan Gilbert's hurt. The strength of their team has now become their offense, which hadn't been the case over the last several years. I don't know that there's a ton of staying power to them continuing to be a top 5 offense, because they still have guys that swing and miss quite a bit. But they're off to a good start, and that's definitely promising for the future for them, especially because the AL West is just not very good.
So last year, early on in the season, you wrote an article about the Chicago White Sox and their brutal start that just got worse and worse as the year went on, and how to potentially bet and profit on their misfortune. Seems like that was the inspiration for another article you did this week on the Colorado Rockies. What stood out to you throughout your research on Colorado?
Well, there's a few things that stood out to me. First of all, just how incredibly bad they truly are, right? I mean, the wins and losses will tell you that. But this is also a team that, you take them out on the road, they're averaging 2.2 runs per game. Like, we know the Coors Field effect is a thing. I'm not going to get deep into the science here, but, pitches don't move as much in the thin air in Denver. So you're kind of used to one thing as a pitcher and as a hitter. Then you go out on the road, and it's a very different thing in terms of the movement that you're going to have either on the pitches you're throwing or the pitches you're swinging at. So they're always better at home, no matter what. They're always better at home. And they are better at home this year, but their pitching staff's giving up almost 6.5 runs per game at Coors Field, and their offense just isn't nearly good enough to overcome that. The other thing that I noticed here, so they were off yesterday, which is good. It was good timing to write the article. Over their next 25 games, Tigers, who lead the AL Central, Padres, would be a playoff team, Rangers, right now the Rangers are the only opponent with a losing record that they will face until June 2nd. So they have the Diamondbacks, Phillies, Yankees, Cubs, and Mets after that. So I was thinking, what do you, 25 games, right? Tigers, Padres, Rangers, D-backs, Phillies, Yankees, Cubs, Mets.
That's brutal.
What's the over-under there on their wins? 4.5
Sure.
of the next 25 games? Something like that? So this thing is going to get even worse before it gets better for this team. And they have a cheap owner. It's really, really bad here. And, I think we may have seen this in a few instances last year with the White Sox, but we may be getting to a point where the standard run line for Colorado is -2.5.
Yeah.
Because they've lost 22 of their 28 games by more than one run. So the run line's been cashing at a pretty extreme rate. That may continue to happen here, and they may have to go to -2.5 on this team.
If you want full insight in the article, up on VSiN.com right now, just laying out the Rocky season to this point, VSiN.com/subscribe. If you want to come join us, don't get limited by the article restrictions. Get access to all of the daily previews, best bets, betting splits, all of that. Just $199 right now through August. Use our promo code PRO. Lock in 14 months of VSiN Pro access. Again, $199, VSiN.com/subscribe. And we're going to force Adam to hang out with us for another segment as we round out this Tuesday edition of the program. Best bets are coming up after a quick timeout. Stay with us.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
closing out this Tuesday edition of Money Moves, VSiN, the Sports Betting Network, Sirius XM Channel 158. We're live in downtown Las Vegas, Circa Resort and Casino. Stormy, Buonantony, JVT, Adam Burke, all on the desk. And Adam, with your MLB article up at VSiN.com right now, as we get to our best bets presented by G-Bank, the official bank of VSiN. Might as well get started with you. What was the game that was calling to you most as you went through the card today?
Well, there were a few of them, but I think the one, and I had a hard time figuring out how to play this, because there's a lot of things I think kind of made sense in this game to me. There's also the chance of rain, which kind of threatens a handicap too, because if there's a rain delay, starting pitcher may not come back out, stuff like that. But the Rangers and the Red Sox here. So Nate Eovaldi going back to Boston, making the start here. Lucas Giolito gets the call for Boston in this one. Just his second start of the season, his home debut actually at Fenway Park here in this one. But I started really digging into this Boston offense because while they're pretty talented, while they can hit for some power, they also swing and miss a ton. Well, they swing and miss a lot at hard stuff, cutters specifically, and fastballs. So that's kind of Nate Eovaldi's wheelhouse. And the other thing he has is a splitter and a curveball. So there's a lot of secondary pitches for Eovaldi that I think he can leverage really, really well in this game. Don't love the Texas bullpen, though. Also, it's Fenway Park. Crazy things can happen. Rain delay is a possibility, so I didn't want to play any of the pitcher props with Eovaldi or anything like that. What I ultimately wound up doing was I took the Rangers' first 5 run line, minus half a run at plus 110. I don't love Giolito. His first start, he had 7 strikeouts against the Blue Jays, but a lot of called strikes. The Rangers are the most aggressive offense in baseball in terms of swing percentage, so he's not going to get those called strikes in this one. Quality of the stuff doesn't look as good coming off of injury yet. So Rangers' first 5 run line at plus money for me in that one.
Okay.
All right. I like it. Me?
Yes, you.
All right. Well, then we'll for sure go with you can lay 6 with the Minnesota Timberwolves, despite the start to the second round for some of these favorites, for some of them, all of them, all losing at home outright in very glorious fashion, by the way. It's actually been a very good start to the second round. The games have been fantastic. I do think that there is some mismatches that work in favor of Minnesota. We also get, which did not work out last night, but maybe works out tonight, Stormy, the Game 7 angle. Team coming off the Game 7, now hitting the road, take on a well-rested opponent over the course of history. It has worked out in your favor, and I think Minnesota's got a lot going for them in terms of mismatches that really bother Golden State. So I think 6 is a fair price to lay. There's 6 here at Circa and other spots. So I think Minnesota, the side to play tonight. Used it in the contest up at the website at VSiN.com, and I think that is very much worth recommending.
Okay. I'm going back to Major League Baseball. I laid the price with the Cubs today, minus 148. I know it's been bet up a little bit that way against the Giants. They handled business yesterday, 9-2 against the Giants in what was their second largest margin of defeat for the Giants this season. And I think the Cubs could be poised for another good day today with Colin Ray on the hill. You mentioned his numbers earlier. Yep. 1.46 ERA, 21 strikeouts in 24 2/3 innings. Verlander on the other side has been fine, but no run support in any of his starts. So the Cubs, I know it's a little bit of a pricey money line here, but I think that they get it done for you and cash the ticket. Prayers up.
You like Ray. You're a big Ray person.
I do. He's a ray of sunshine and on the hill. I love it.
So the thing about Colin Ray, I looked a lot at that game this morning too. The thing about Colin Ray is he's actually lowered his arm angle this season. So he's getting a lot more life on his pitches, specifically a lot more life on his fastball. So that's one of the things that's kind of tough about the baseball season, right? We're to the point now, you're 6, 7 starts in for a lot of these guys. The guys that have track records of not being as good as they are this season, or maybe vice versa, you just kind of think like natural regression is going to show up, right? Colin Ray typically doesn't miss bats. The stuff has kind of been pedestrian, all of that. So you start thinking, okay, this is a guy that I want to look to go against. But he's made a substantive change to his arm angle that has increased the quality of his stuff. So, maybe he can keep doing this. So that's something I think is worth a cautionary tale here for bettors that are out there. Just because a dude hasn't been that good in the past or has been really good in the past doesn't mean that all of the sudden, everything is going to level out and they're going to regress to the mean. Guys make adjustments. Guys make changes. Guys learn new pitches. You've got to dig a little bit deeper and not just take it on surface level of, hey, I'm used to this guy being good. He's going to be good the rest of the way. Not always true in baseball.
No, I love that. He's made positive adjustments, as you referenced, and when you're backed up with one of the best lineups in baseball as well, that's certainly going to help your cause. I don't want to give away everything from your article today, but is there anything else that you want to give out here in this final segment?
Yeah, there's another one I took. Speaking of laying prices here, I laid the price with the Phillies tonight, Zach Wheeler and Drew Rasmussen in that one. The Phillies just have a better offense. I mean, the Rays have really struggled here over the last couple of weeks or so. Wheeler's actually been a little bit better than what his 3.48 ERA suggests. 2.48 expected ERA, 3.29 FIP. Rasmussen's a guy a little bit on the other side. 2.48 weighted on base average against, 2.94 expected weighted on base average. So he's a guy that I think is going to kind of go the other way a little bit. And frankly, I mean, this is just a price on a guy in Wheeler who is very, very projectable. You know what you're going to get out of him almost game in and game out. And being a short favorite with the better offense here in this game, I had to take the Phillies at a short price there.
What do we make really quick, because we should mention this? It is Paul Skeens Day today.
Yeah.
It seems like a relatively cheap price, given the way the market generally prices Skeens. Not only did we see the overnight at minus 135, this is now like minus 115.
Yeah, I mean, Matthew Liberatore has been very, very good here so far for the Cardinals, so that's part of it. The other thing is, I mean, just generally speaking, right, the Pirates' offense sucks. So, you know, it's one of those things where it's very, very hard to take them, even if it's Skeens, even if it's Bubba Chandler, who should be up here soon. You know, and I also think that the vibes are not particularly good with Pittsburgh right now. This is a team that has O'Neal Cruz and Paul Skeens and Jared Jones, if you want to lump him in there, even though he's hurt. Guys that are cost-controlled, very, very young. Ownership still won't spend money. Yesterday, you saw Carmen Mlodzinski come out of the game after 4 2/3. Derek Shelton goes out there and pulls him because he's turned the lineup over again. And I won't repeat what the pitcher said as he was walking off the mound, but I think the vibes are not immaculate with the Pirates right now. And that's something that kind of leaks over to everybody, I think, and can be very, very toxic. We saw it with the Blue Jays last year. We've seen it with some other teams here of late as well. It's very hard right now, even with Skeens on the mound, to be interested in backing the Pirates.
And the lines moved against him a little bit. Was minus 125 earlier, now down to minus 118. Despite the 2.74 ERA, still 3-3 for him as a starter this year because of exactly what you're laying out with how things have gone for the Pirates offensively. Anything else that you like tonight, JVT?
No, I mean, I do like the Knights tonight, I will say that, but I've got this future on them, so I will be rooting VGK on, and I do think that even some of those places that are still like pick or small dog price in the series are worth playing if you don't have anything.
Best Bets presented by GBank, the official bank of VSiN. You can get the GBank Visa Signature Card today, whereas most credit cards treat sportsbooks and gaming transactions as cash advances. That's even when you put your own money on the card. GBank treats those gaming transactions as purchases, so you're saving 3 to 5% on cash advance fees right there. Also, with GBank, you're earning 1% cashback rewards on all other eligible sportsbook and gaming transactions and 2% cashback rewards on eligible purchases. Apply now at VSiN.com/GBank. That's VSIN.com/GBank. And I didn't put this as a best bet, but worth noting, I think. I do like the Capitals at home as a moneyline dog tonight, plus 120. Against the Carolina Hurricanes. I feel like that number is just too big considering they're at home. We've seen all of these home dogs get these early season wins, whether it's in the NBA or the NHL here to this point. And I think this is going to be a much more even series than the series odds would indicate with how far Carolina has been bet out over minus 166, minus 170. Carolina's plus 140, plus 150. I mean, Washington plus 140, plus 150 in the series now. But game one at home, these two held home ice in the regular season for those 4 games. I feel like Washington has gained a lot of confidence the way that they won that early series. They were one of the best teams in the entire National Hockey League throughout the course of the regular season, yet nobody believes in them for some reason.
Yep. I hope, I'm curious if you're right here, because you're right. I have not talked to anybody who makes the case, and it is always interesting when you see this market stubbornness when it comes to a certain team, and this is now spanned multiple years when it comes to Carolina, the respect for this Hurricanes team, despite the fact that the results have not been there, at least the ultimate result.
This is a quant-driven move. This is a modeling crowd type of move, and this happens almost all the time on Carolina because they stand out so much in 5-on-5 metrics during the regular season. Expected goals for, expected goals for percentage, they were number 1 in the NHL. Scoring chance percentage at 5-on-5, they were number 1 in the NHL. So that's something that the market just, a lot of those people out there that move numbers based on models, I mean, they love this Carolina team and have for several years now.
By the way, I lied. I do have something else here today. I am going to tell you on Aiden Hill over 23.5 saves minus 130.
Okay. Roll with it.
I think there's one other thing that we should mention here. Sovereignty will not run in the Preakness. That came down a little bit ago here, so we do not have a shot at a Triple Crown winner because Sovereignty will not run at Pimlico here. What is that? On May 18th, 17th, May
I remember
17th.
Back in the day when the horses that I used to know, they would actually run these things.
Trainer Belmont informed the Preakness folks that they would point toward the Belmont Stakes next, saying, the Preakness saying, we extend our congratulations to their connections of sovereignty and respect their decision. We will continue to see the excitement building toward the milestone celebration of the 150th Preakness.
Soft generation.
Did the horse tell you he didn't want to run it? Does he not like that course? Interesting. We're going to take a break now. That's it for us. Thanks for hanging out. More Money Moves tomorrow, same time, same place. But keep it locked here on VSiN. Prop Points is coming up after this.